and welcome to Power Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most unprincipled and homegrown work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we are back to finish off Arc 8 Vanishing Points with 8.8 All, which features all of the Kenneteers, all four of them, giving a perspective, before we move into Shaking Hands 9.1 from Lucy's perspective. But let's wrap up Vanishing Points first, shall we? We are going to get everyone's perspective eventually, but we'll start with Lucy, who is dropped off by Zed and met at the door by her family, Jazz, Booker, and the new member of the family. What's her name?
I love that moment where Lucy's like, she calls her what's her name, and then in the very next sentence, she uses the word Alyssa, like the name Alyssa, and it's just like, okay, so you knew what you were doing.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's pretty obvious. She knows her name. She obviously does. It's just a running beat of her not being, I guess, willing to accept that this person's going to be a part of her life.
Yeah, pretty much.
Should we talk first, though, about the fact that this is 8.8 and not like an interlude or whatever? I mean, obviously, it's not an interlude because it's from the perspective of our four Kenneteers, but and also it's obviously kind of a bit of a trap to worry about Wildbow naming conventions for his chapters, but I'm trying to like figure out the logic behind it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to stress about this, like 4.x was a Snowdrop interlude, so like I think I feel like if you think about what an interlude is, this isn't that. It's just a very differently structured chapter. So I kind of get why it's 8.8 and not 8 dot all or 8 dot z or whatever. I mean, I really liked it because it caught me completely off guard. I was like reading the Lucy part and I was like, this is moving very quickly. I have no idea where this chapter's going. And then it just ended and we went on to the Snowdrop part. And I was like, oh, okay, that's allowed. I didn't know that was in the rules.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? But it's a great way to kind of get back into the flow of things in Kennet, make sure we're kind of picking up all these dangling threads that we had.
Oh yeah, it's great for, like, I've seen people making lists of all the stuff we have to address when we get back to Kennet, and this chapter resolves / kickstarts like over half of them. Like Verona and her dad, Verona and Jeremy, Lucy meeting Booker, Avery having
Melissa,
a conversation with her parents.
I was surprised Melissa showed up. I was like, oh yeah, that's a thread we've got to worry about.
Exactly. Like it's most of the list is just basically everything that doesn't have to do with the others and the main mystery. This chapter is kind of like, hey, friendly reminder, this shit's going on.
Yeah, just kind of doing a quick loop over the whole deal.
Which is a really cool thing to do as we sort of have this homecoming and move back into this side of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just great style, I guess, for the end of this arc.
Yeah. But yeah, so I to get back to Lucy, and what she has here, I like how almost the first thing that happens in this is as she's getting out of the car, like Verona kind of does a little prank and pushes her or something, and for a second Lucy doesn't know what's up, and it's sort of like it got my guards raised. I was like, oh shit, what's happening? And then it just turns out to be like a dumb prank, but I thought this was like a really cool little writing way of just nudging me in a bit of that like Lucy headspace of like always having to be on guard.
Yeah, you're right. Every Lucy chapter has to start with us putting the guard up a bit so we can get back into her mindset. I also love this little moment of Lucy thanking Zed. Zed's just proven to be a real champ over the course of this story.
When you know it's true because Lucy said it as well.
Yeah.
Actually, the other thing Lucy and Zed talk about briefly that I thought we should bring up is so Nicolette has sort of been brought under Ray's wing. He's going to kind of be her supervisor. I don't know. Like the word master felt correct for Alexander and Bristow, but I don't get that vibe with Ray.
No, mentor maybe.
Yeah, mentor. Mentor's good. A guardian almost because fuck knows her family's not going to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of like I heard this and I was like that sounds like a good fit to me. I don't know. Maybe it's just because the bar is so shockingly low for her previous mentors. But I was like, I could see Ray and Nicolette helping each other in a good way.
To me, it's the same thought I have anytime anything with Ray comes up, which is like, yeah, this was okay. Could be better, but it also could be worse. Which is pretty much the theme of Ray as a character in this story.
Yeah, I don't know. See, because like at first I thought, oh, do I just think this is a good fit because there's no one in Nicolette's life who's better, and that is true. You know, like the closest other thing I could think of is trying to get with that Augur coven who were going to work with Bristow, but they were going to work with Bristow, so
Yeah,
they
obviously
can't be all
flawed.
that.
Yeah.
But I actually, yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking about it, and I was like, this actually just feels like a good fit. I think Nicolette will bring a bit more of a human perspective to Ray, and like Ray can actually sort of take care of Nicolette while giving her a bit of space because that's I feel like what she probably needs. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
we'll
can see
find
that.
out.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see, I guess. We'll see when/if they come back into this story again. So yeah, we see Booker in the flesh, finally. It's good to see him. It's obviously it's good to see him because we're in Lucy's mind and she's kind of very, very excited by the fact that he's here. Booker has been so built up in Lucy's mind that I kind of can't help but worry that either he's going to be a letdown somehow, he's going to let her down, or there'll be tension from him being in danger or something. Like he can't be built up so much and just be positive in this story. There has to be some knowing Wildbow, there has to be some perversion of all that goodwill that Lucy has built up.
No, or is that the twist? He'll just be fine.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, we'll get into this a bit next chapter.
Yeah.
It's
No,
looking like
yeah.
it's going to be that he's going to be in danger kind of thing.
Yeah, because I mean, so far he's sort of living up to all the very high expectations I had for him.
Yes, he's a great older
Like,
brother.
in fact, this whole introduction, like Luce sort of reunites with her family, and it's like Booker is he's amazing. Like it's the little details, like he compliments her earring, which you're just like, okay, like many points for that. And then like her mom, like Jazz, has this great moment where she's like, a single guy drove you three home, but she actually listens to Lucy when Lucy's like, it's fine, like it's
Yeah.
Zed, it's fine. Even Alyssa gets fine greeting. Like it's just, yeah. I was really glad we opened with this one because I was instantly like, oh, this is going to be the nicest homecoming, and I'm glad we're starting here.
Yeah, it's good to have some positive stuff to remind us that it's not all terrible shit back in Kennet.
Yeah. I mean, to jump back on what you said before, like with Booker failing, I could see. I'm thinking back to like the original time. I think it was like in Arc 2 where he started giving Lucy that advice about like going to parties and stuff.
Mm.
And there was that big essay on the subreddit. I think it was by like Tenky Forecast, but I'm not sure. On like the historical
Yes.
like activist named Booker, and then W.E.B. Du Bois.
Dubois, I think is probably how it's pronounced, but who
No,
knows?
we went
Did
through
we
this
have
last
this
time,
exact conversation?
and I was right because his name is used as a rhyme in a Crazy Ex-Girlfriend song, so that's how I know.
What song?
It's brilliant. The sex toys one. It's actually removed. It's like you can like see the cast recording of it, but it got cut from the show. I'll send you a
Right.
link
Du
after this.
Bois sex toys. Is that what you're
Yeah,
telling
yeah,
me? Okay, I get
yeah.
you.
Anyway, um, yeah. So like I don't know, but like with that sort of history lesson we got back then in my mind, you could see Booker and Lucy coming up against each other about like how much to push back on things. Um, but I mean, the start of Arc 9
Mm,
seems to imply that your other idea that he'll just be in danger seems more likely at this stage.
mm. Yeah,
I mean,
it definitely does, doesn't it?
is it weird to say I hope it's just that he ends up in mortal danger? Like, I don't want
Yeah,
them to
pretty
fight.
weird.
I don't want him to fight. It's so much simpler if he's just, kidnapped and maybe tortured a bit or something. I don't know.
Mm, hmm, hmm. We'll see. Yeah, I guess that isn't the worst option, is it? Which is horrible to say. Um,
Welcome to the other verse.
So yes, inside Lucy grills Booker a bit about Alyssa before the two lovebirds head out to meet friends. So Lucy catches up with her mum over some reheated dinner.
Yeah, and yeah, like again, Lucy and Booker, they take a moment to check in on each other, like on a sort of personal level. Before I feel like Lucy just launches into full on like interrogation mode. Um, like I just this whole vibe Lucy gives off in both these chapters of just like low key not trusting Alyssa is just very funny to me. Um, like even
Mm.
Jazz comes up and she's like, "Oh, I really like her."
Yeah, everyone can clearly kind of tell that Lucy is uncomfortable with Alyssa, and I mean, it's like unfounded, right? Or not unfounded, but uncharitable at the very least. Um, Alyssa seems fine, good,
Yeah.
even some would say.
Well, yeah, I mean, but again, it's that thing. She needs to win points with Lucy before Lucy will trust her, especially with someone like Booker. Whereas, like,
Yeah,
like I feel like Booker and probably Jazz are a bit more in that headspace of, in this context, willing to give her the benefit of the doubt until she does something wrong. Um, it's just so funny to me because I feel like traditionally it's like if you're if you're a girlfriend, you're trying to win over the mum more than anyone. And we get here and Jazz is already like, "Oh yeah, she's great," and it's like, "Okay, no, Lucy's the one
yeah.
that you need to
Lucy's
win
the
over in this
real
house."
decision maker in this household. Yeah, it is nice to see Lucy sliding back into this family dynamic that is obviously both so comfortable and comforting to her, even with
Mm,
Alyssa around. But having said that, we do get reminders that like the practitioner stuff is obviously a big wedge that is dividing Lucy and her mother. Like tangibly, Lucy has to turn down what is clearly would be a comforting night of like support from her mother here because of the practitioner stuff. She just can't
mm.
take that outreach.
Yeah, exactly, and that is sort of a uniquely Lucy side to all this because
Mm,
Avery has other problems and she doesn't really communicate that deeply with her family anyway, and well, I mean, Verona.
yeah, Verona
So
doesn't.
doesn't
Verona's
need to be
relationship
said.
with her dad is with both her parents actually is probably not
Yeah.
salvageable in the time remaining for this story.
Yeah, so like, yeah, because like, I mean, obviously, the whole like secret identity, secret magic thing is something that like a lot of stories in this sort of genre have dealt with. Um, so I'm interested to see, yeah, where it might go with Lucy's because we definitely hit that beat here, like you said.
Mm, yeah. Um, so yeah, Lucy has this food and is kind of settling back into her life in Kennet before looking out over the town and seeing this state of decay that is falling over it.
Yeah, I mean, after such a heartwarming segment, this is a really deliciously ominous way to end it. Like as we head into the rest of the chapter, everything's been so nice, and it's just like as we leave, we have to be reminded that this town is very unstable, and Lucy is going to make that her responsibility.
Mm, yeah. She's the sheriff and she's back in town to take care of business. Um, yeah. So Lucy's having such a weird time dealing with Alyssa, right? I think I want to think about whether it's like if it's just her being so defensive of Booker, or if there's like a wider point about Lucy's reluctance to for things to change in any way. I don't know. I mean, obviously, like change in general in her life has been pretty negative most of the time.
Yeah. I I mean, again, I also just think she thinks so highly of Booker. Like as we talked about, the expectations were so high for us going into this. Um, and I think it's just natural if you think Booker is like the bee's knees in the same way Lucy does, having this other like girl in his life who's not only like important to him, so you're like worried for him, but also is taking away time that she should be spending with Booker. I think
Mm.
it's just I think it's just that sort of natural reaction like that. I don't know. I'm talking very hypothetically. At least in my family, it's usually like 10 minutes after meeting one of my sisters or when people have met my exes, it's been like, what are you doing with this Diebold? Like, you could do better. We have a very different response. It's much more like what Sheridan would give.
Yeah.
So I'm very much speaking hypothetically when I talk about what it would be like to have a protective sibling.
Yeah. No, I also don't. That's not the relationship I have with my sisters. It's yeah, much more Australian, I guess, is how I would describe it. But yeah, yeah. I don't know. I the question I'm weighing up in my head is there enough time in this story for all of these beats to really land? Like, it doesn't feel like there's even enough time for us to really get to the juicy meat of this Alyssa stuff. And maybe it is Wildbow just setting up threads that he might pick up and he might not. But I kind of feel like I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Will we get some big Alyssa payoff? Maybe we will.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Wild Boar stories as well is they can get pretty dense in the amount of moments they're covering when the
Yes,
when the climax
true.
is sort of happening. Like it's not I think the way character moments get weaved into big action set pieces is such such a strength of Wild Boar's writing. But
Mm.
as the Carmine shit is going down, Booker and Alyssa might get roped in, and it might come in that regard. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. We'll touch on when we get to Avery's segment. There's something in there that I think is just a brilliant example of how dense Wildbow can pack these themes while still making them all feel very, very justified and narratively rewarding. We'll get to
Mm.
that in a moment because next we're jumping into the perspective of our favorite Kenneteer, Snowdrop, who is regaling the goblins with stories of her exploits.
A scene that's made even more delightful by Cherry's meltdown at Snowdrop's delivery.
Yes,
Like, I
she
just,
still just doesn't get it.
yeah, how does she still not get it? Like, I know the book has spent, like, this entire story has been a recurring thing. It's like, oh, Cherry is so stupid. It's like,
Mm,
she's literally hung out with Snowdrop for weeks.
yeah.
How does she say she's so stupid?
How does she still not get it? Yeah, no. I mean, she never will, and that's the brilliant thing about Cherry. The moment that Cherry gets the joke, something wrong is going to happen.
It's a great example of show don't tell, really, because the book kept telling us Cherry is stupid, but it really took until this moment for me to realize, oh, Cherry's really fucking stupid.
Hey, hey, hey. Yeah. It's good stuff. But yeah, obviously, Snowdrop being included in this chapter means that she is obviously officially a Kenneteer. There is no denying.
hmm Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, Snowdrop is the fourth Kenneteer. This just makes it canon. Um, I also like. I feel like a big thing in this chapter, and it's something we've been talking about all arc. Really, is like growth and how you choose the parts of yourself that you want to grow
Mm,
as you're growing. And like I feel like Snowdrop's POV is important for a chapter talking about that because she grows quicker. Like that's just she's aged like 2 human years or something since we met her.
mm,
Um, but she's also like yeah, she was just sort of Avery plus some stuff, like or Avery plus opossum plus some stuff, and now she's grown and she's her own person now. So of course we sort of have to explore her for a bit.
mm. Yeah. Um, Yeah, she really has padded out and has fleshed out. I mean, I guess we'll get into this as we see what happens next because she heads to Louise's house, Louise Bayer, and bumps into Melissa, who is clearly not doing well.
Oh man, Melissa. Um,
Yeah, it's rough.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Again, this is one of those loose threads where it was like, oh yeah, right. And I mean, you know, do you need any more symbolism for Melissa is self destructive right now? Then she's at Louisa's house. She started smoking apparently. Like I think that's new.
Mm,
Um,
yes, it is.
yeah, just I mean, she used to be sort of Miss Healthy Sports outreach person, and now we're seeing her like sitting alone smoking at the house of the only other person who's possibly as self-destructive in town.
Mm.
So it's just just in case you had any hope for Melissa, this chapter's kind of like no, she's in a bad spot.
And remember, this was all prompted by Nicolette. Nicolette
Mm.
explicitly made this happen.
Well,
Ah,
Ruben, not to be a Nicolette apologist, but as Nicolette loves to remind us whenever this comes up, technically it was maybe going to happen a little bit anyway.
sure, sure.
You
And
can't know.
the other thing is, according to Nicolette, Melissa is basically wallowing in it rather than taking any active steps to get out of it, which is,
Yeah.
again, feels a bit victim blamey, but all right,
Or
Nicolette.
all I did was push her down, and now you want me to help her up? What are you?
Yeah, I held my hand out. She just has to reach up and take it.
Yeah, exactly.
She just has to pull herself up by her bootstraps. Exactly right. But yeah, no, like the smoking is new, right? And presumably, like implied, she's picked it up from Louise, right? And Louise we met in the very first chapter in the prologue of this story, and it was kind of clear that while Louise was maybe a good person, she had struggled a lot under the weight of the stuff in her life, and that just seems like it's saying to us, this is what Melissa is going to turn into.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, and that was the whole fucking speech in Arc 5. Was it Guillaume or who was it? But we got Charles, Louise, and no, it was Clem, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But was Louise? No, it was like maybe it was just Charles and Melissa, but it was sort of like this is the whole thing. It's like, yeah, you don't want to go down this slope, and Clem was like, oh, okay, and Melissa was just like, interesting. There's
Interesting.
more.
There's more. I can go lower. Interesting.
Quick, let me grab my shovel. Yeah, I mean, obviously, she gets brought up next chapter, so it feels like probably in the first half of
Yeah,
Arc 9, we're
it's
going to
going to be
go.
the dealing with Melissa part
Yeah,
of the
I
arc.
can't
Yeah.
wait.
Snowdrop responds very well to this, which was what I kind of wanted to jump back on. It's clear that Snowdrop is actually becoming more active in the sense of like being a Kenneteer, helping her out,
Mm.
helping out around Kennet, because she takes note of this. She's pretty good about like getting into Melissa's good books, learning what she needs to learn, and then promising to report it all back to Avery.
I mean, what like a big moment for me was I think more than anywhere else we've seen before, Snowdrop really uses her lying cleverly. Like she
Mm.
tactically answers Melissa's questions in such a way to like lead Melissa in the wrong direction. Like there's a great bit where Melissa is like, "Oh, is Louise your mum?" And Snowdrop can't think of an answer, so she just stares at her until she says "aunt," and then Snowdrop can say no, which comes out as yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's like actually believable. So yeah. Like I guess speaking of growth, like Snowdrop has really sort of grown into, this way that she talks, and she's actually like turned it into a tool now, and
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. She's taking it and learning to use it in a useful way, which is great.
Yeah, because like I forgot to bring it up in the Lucy segment, but like something I wanted to sort of track as we're going through the chapter is I feel like this chapter specifically has a number of moments that echo the the start of Arc 4, which is when they kind of left town. Like I think we're sort of showing how much these four have grown in their time away, and part of the way we're doing this is I think a lot of scenes here mirror some of the scenes from around the time of the party that happened. And this one with Snowdrop is like as you said, Snowdrop's actually out helping, and using this ability she has in a cool way.
Yeah, yeah. Go Snowdrop. So next up, Verona, who starts off her segment, how else, by talking to her dad.
The very first line, I was just like, oh fuck, like
Yeah.
this
Set the
again.
stage for Verona chapter. Here we go. We mentioned a Lucy chapter has to start with her guard being a bit up. A Verona chapter has to start with us hating her dad, or it's not canon.
I mean, to be fair, it's been a while since he's been like an active thing. I
Yeah.
kind of forgot how bad he was. Um,
Yeah.
it's been nice to kind of be away from it and just have it as like a background thing that is causing Verona anxiety rather than this.
Yeah. It's the worst. I mean, like, yeah, the start of this sentence brings us exactly how into the mindset of Verona. Like, it brings her back down to the glum reality of her life because her dad is basically saying, the words he says are, "I need your help out around the house more," but what it actually means is, "Welcome back to Kennet. It's going to get worse," right? Like, that's the theme of this chapter. Welcome back to Kennet. Some things are good, but a lot of things are shit, and it's getting worse. So, good luck.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, what's funny is because we know he's injured, and Verona starts this like on the phone. There
Mm.
was actually like about 4 or 5 paragraphs where I just thought he was upstairs in bed and couldn't come down to see her. I was just talking to her in the house. And it's obviously not that, but I was like, God, that shows how fucking rock bottom my expectations are that I was just immediately willing to buy. He couldn't even come down to see her,
Mm.
despite being able to like go out to dinner with Jazz and co. Uh, but yeah, I mean the other sort of really big thing is like this is all established. Like what she's talking about with her dad as this opens is what food she can reheat and basically how shit the options are. And because like that was a whole thing for Verona the whole time at the Blue Heron Institute is she was like,
The food's
"Oh,
so
this is good
delicious.
food.
Yeah.
How am I going to go back to what I used to eat?" And that whole thing got a bit muddled towards the end because it turns out the brownie food wasn't all that.
Mm.
But obviously, like, yeah, I really like that. That's sort of been a through line of her time at the Blue Heron Institute was, oh
Mm.
no, like, how am I going to go back to eating this shitty food? And the second she gets back, it's like, well, here's two shitty options you're not going to like for food.
Yep. Right back into it. Yeah.
This is like the exact opposite tone to Lucy's.
Yeah, exactly right. So then there's a beat where Verona's dad tells her that he loves her, and she thinks, love you too, she thought. She wasn't brave enough to put it to actual spoken word. And yeah, again, this is powerful. I mean, this feels like it's an extension of the moment when Verona told her mother that she loved her and then wasn't sure if it was true or not, right?
Yeah,
And
I think
so,
like later in the night, she thought she might have gainsaid herself by saying that.
yes, and that's obviously what she is afraid of when she's thinking that she's not brave enough to put it to words. It feels like this is something that we're going to see a third beat of, either a reconciliation and her saying it tangibly and believing it, or the more likely option, which is complete disconnection and her not even thinking it the next time, right? So look out for that. Look out for one of Verona's parents, probably her dad, telling her that they love her, and then Verona just not responding, not even thinking it.
Yeah, like because I mean that's really the thing with all this is like, can you imagine that we ever get to a place where Verona can say she loves her dad without feeling like she's lying or giving power to him? Like I think the power dynamic between her and her dad is something we sort of explore in her snippet here, and that
Yeah.
was like the vibe I get here. Is she doesn't want to say she loves him because that she sees that as like giving up power. I think almost to some degree.
Mm.
Which obviously that's a super healthy way to think about these things. And
Hmm.
yeah, like, is there a way? Is there a way she could get there with anyone, especially her dad? Is sort of my question at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. Again, not in the amount of time that it feels like we have left in this story.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Verona gets out of the house to get some air and bumps into a ghost, and then Jeremy.
um, I love it how so because she barely goes into the house. She basically gets in there, drops her bags, and then has this moment of like, I feel like an intruder. It's all like dark and stale, and she's totally disconnected from it as a space. And obviously, because it's like her house has always been like that. Like I don't think that's actually new. Like
Mm.
that was Avery's read on it in like Arc 2. It's sort of like, if you go away on a holiday or something for like 2 weeks and then you come back to your house and it feels a bit weird when you first get there, like it feels different.
Mm.
She's getting that, but to like this way bigger degree because it wasn't ever really a home for her. It was the place well, it was a prison, really. Um,
Yeah.
as she sort of comes back to it after having actually kind of found a bit of a home at the Blue Heron Institute. And yeah, she just like, yeah, she sort of comes in here and I was just like, oh, it's like really powerful that she sort of finally sees this place for what it is because now she's had somewhere that she liked to be.
Mm.
And in classic Verona fashion, she doesn't quite process this, she just panics and leaves.
Yeah, it's an interesting point though. She now has a more tangible alternative for what her life could be like, and it
Yeah.
is empowering to her, right?
Yeah, and like she was the one in the Blue Heron Institute who laid out their room, and she's the one who's first in line to get a domain in town. Like I think,
Mm.
Like something we sort of hit in this, at least the second half of this story, is like that Verona is somebody who wants a space to be herself and to have that. And now that she's had that, she's come back to this home and realized it's not that, and that causes her to like freak out and leave. And oh, like I love how much she's lying to herself as she sort of leaves. Like she comes out and she's like, "Oh, we said we wouldn't go and seek out the others until we all saw them tomorrow. So I'm just gonna walk around town, and if any others show up, well, oh no." Like it's the most
Not my fault.
disingenuous. Yeah, it's the most disingenuous. But she's doing that bit from The Simpsons, where it's like, "I'm gonna walk with my arms spinning like this, and if you walk
Yeah.
into them, it's your own fault."
Yep, and it works. She finds this weirdo ghost that she quickly deals with.
Yeah. Yeah. More importantly, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, our soon-to-be fifth Kenneteer, who is great chemistry with Verona. So let's make it canon.
I mean, calling him the fifth Kenneteer is total liberty erasure. I won't stand for it. Also, Liz, there are so many Kenneteers now. I want everyone to be a Kenneteer.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it would solve some of the problems that the Kenneteers are having, right? Access to power. Obviously, it comes with its own set of problems, but
We got so many goblins in town. Just bring Liberty in. Make her the fifth Kenneteer. She deserves it.
So yeah, Verona takes Jeremy to her serial killer bedroom, which is a pretty fun moment. She hides all of the magical stuff, but she doesn't think to hide the jars of hair, which implies that Verona's radar for what weird shit should I hide before bringing a cute boy to my room is just really off.
Yeah, which, I mean, of course it is. It's Verona.
Yeah, has it ever been on?
Yeah, exactly. And so I get the impression that she very much enjoyed this moment because he's like, "Is that hair?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, it's sorted though." He's like, "What?" She's like, "That one's cat and that one's opossum." And he's like, "Opossum?" And she just gets to steamroll past it. Like I get the impression she was having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, the closest she gets to an explanation is he asks, "Do you make your own paintbrushes?" And she said, "Oh, I tried that," and doesn't elaborate. So, which is clearly to us a no.
Yeah, but it lets Jeremy file this away as not the weirdest fucking shit ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're right though. I think like just how whack this room is sort of really sets the tone for Jeremy has no idea what he's gotten into here. And he's about to find out, but this is sort of just the opening salvo of weirdness for him.
Yeah. He is immediately out of his depth, but he puts up a good fight, Jeremy. Good on him. Yeah, Verona kind of keeps making things a bit more and more intimate until things reach their inevitable conclusion for these two.
Yep. Everyone saw this coming except for Verona, I think. I mean, yeah, this whole segment where, it's sort of it's just equal parts like lovely and cringy. Like it's exactly that sort of adorably dorky, awkward stuff that happens when teenagers are like trying to get close like this.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely got its moments of cringiness, definitely. But on the flip side, Verona is opening up to Jeremy about things that she seemingly hasn't even told Lucy about, or at least we haven't seen her say these things, or things as vulnerable as this with Lucy, who is obviously her closest friend, right? So clearly, this is working for her to, get a bit of connection, a bit of human connection that isn't related to the practice.
Yeah, I really like that framing. This is even though Jeremy has been labeled as someone who could fall in quite easily, like he's not in the practice. And I mean, yeah, you're right. This is stuff like so she goes on all this stuff about like how some of her coping mechanisms for when her parents were getting divorced and it was like the roughest time. And it's like she doesn't talk about that stuff. Just she doesn't even usually let herself think that much about this
No,
stuff.
she doesn't.
So like yeah, you're right. It's a real testament to just how like the good vibes Jeremy gives off for Verona here that she's able to so kind of of her own accord start talking about this stuff.
Yeah, which is great. Yeah, I mean, we don't have that much to talk about in the next part. Let's not. I think we agreed with Wild both. It's just nice to let them have their moment. I think it was a Lemony Snicket book where I first saw this technique used of the author almost explicitly saying, and I think in the Lemony Snicket book, the author did explicitly say,
Yeah.
we all know what's going to happen next. Let them have their privacy, and we can come back to them after this scene is completed, which is what Wildbow pulls here.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to touch on like there's the sort of first moment where things start to get a bit emotional, and so Verona just kind of is like, "What do you think about boobs?"
Yeah,
And,
great, brilliant.
and because there's this whole like she almost has to mask any emotional moments they have through this layer of a physical connection to sell it to herself is kind of the vibe I get. Like
Mm.
there's this moment where like she gets Jeremy to rate boobs on a scale out of 10 and then he's like then he calls her like a 10 out of 10 and she sort of internally freaks out a bit and that's when she starts bringing up like underwear and stuff. Like yeah, like it's just I love this for sort of this is the only way Verona can let herself have this stuff is she has to kind of, I think, cover it in a layer of physicality to convince herself that that's what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. What a
And
weird.
sorry,
Sorry, no, please.
well, I was just gonna say because I did notice after I wrote this that you had something on it later in the notes, but I mean I'm obviously very curious to see where this relationship slash totally not a relationship goes because Verona does sort of say this is where I'm at,
Mm.
and like yeah I mean again much better than she does at the party. Like this is the part for me that echoes back to the party in her final scenes in Arc 4 before they left is she doesn't explain this as well. Here she's able to sort of sit Jeremy down and be like, "Look, this is where I'm at. I'm like sort of functionally aromantic." Not the words she uses, but sort of what she says. And then next chapter she's like, "Yep, we've established boundaries. We're on the same page. Everything's good." Is that the impression you got
I
from
mean,
her
no, it's
Jeremy
not.
response?
It's clearly not, right? Like, I mean, you describing it as an adult made it so much more explicit than Verona's half a sentence where she says, I'm not really like into the idea of a boyfriend, which is as explicit as she gets about establishing boundaries. And then Jeremy's just like, oh, okay, wait, I'm trying to figure out what that means. And then Verona's response to that is basically, so what do you think of boobs? And so,
Yeah.
like, obviously they're not on the same page. It's impossible for Jeremy to be on that
I,
page because Verona is jumping around insanely. Like,
I think he does sort of get it, but it's like, well, I don't know. I think there is sort of one moment where he's like, "Oh, okay, that's what you meant before." Like, I didn't quite understand
yes,
it. But there's like such a difference between him understanding it and him being able, like, he basically says like he's in love with her, or he really, really likes her, or whatever
yes.
13-year-old's
He
going to call it.
says she's a 10 out of 10,
Yeah,
implying I really like you. Yeah,
and so, like, the idea that then Verona can just sort of be like, "Hey, look, let's do something," but like, it's not boyfriend girlfriend. It's just friends with benefits, basically. Um, Jeremy, like, it's like because she said that, that's just what Jeremy's going to be able to do now. Like, even if he does know that's what she wants, it's like that's not the page he's on in his head. Like, I just don't see how he can, like there's like as she's brushing her teeth, like he kisses her on the way out, which is like that's boyfriend girlfriend shit. Like I'm
yes,
sorry, Verona, but like,
yeah.
um, so yeah, I don't see a way that this doesn't end in like a broken, well, at least one broken heart.
It's gonna take at least one or if not more of these exact same types of conversations before I feel like we'll actually have boundaries being established. I've pulled out the quote from later, and we can just talk about it now because why not? The quote is, "He's okay, no heart's broken." Okay, true so far. Boundaries were laid out on both sides. Brenna, we did not see boundaries laid out on both sides. We saw some of your boundaries, and we didn't really get any of his boundaries. So I mean, like, I think we could call Verona forsworn here.
Oh yeah, at least Gain said.
Yeah.
Although I don't want to do that. I saw what happened to the last guy. Um, yeah, I don't know. I just even if I got the impression Jeremy did kind of get it, get what she's saying. I don't believe that that means he's going to be able to switch off his emotions and do it on those terms. Like she sort of established the terms, but it's like
Yeah.
that doesn't mean Jeremy can work with them.
Mm.
Maybe he'll try. I mean, it would be kind of deliciously ironic if he did kind of just practice with her and then fall for someone else and then she realizes how she feels. Um, you know, I just think that would be funny. Uh, in a not good way, but a funny one. Um, anyway, yeah, we'll see where this goes. This is going to be a fun mess of a relationship.
Yes, indeed. Jeremy heads home, bumping into VD on the way out, and the peaceful oasis of human connection is quickly shattered.
When her dad first showed up, I was like, "Oh boy, there goes the nice moment." But I actually think
Yep.
I was wrong. I think it gets even better.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's. I mean, okay, here's the quote. The way her dad held himself and looked at her, and the way she could face him down, it felt like the paradigm had changed. That's such a
Hmm.
key quote to me. Like, Verona
Yeah,
feels confident and capable of like defining their dynamic more explicitly and not rebelling but just like existing. Oh yeah, I found that very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Well, exactly. Like this is. I'm just going to keep coming back to this idea because I feel like it's what the chapter's doing. This is how she's grown up in the time away. Is not only did she sort of have this better communication and boundary stuff with Jeremy, but I like the dynamic with her dad. She's come back and she's just got more power in it now, and she's realizing that. Like she,
Yeah.
not that she was like this ideal submissive daughter or whatever the fuck before,
Mm.
but now she's kind of actively rejecting the idea of letting him control the space in that way. Is kind
Yes.
of the vibe I get. Like she's found that ability to stand her ground a little bit more, and this is going to be very fun.
Yeah, for sure. It's great. Big ups to Verona for it because it is brilliant. So next we jump to Avery, who's escorted by a small coterie of goblins. Or I wrote that, and then you've written it's just blunt, and I think you're right. I just assumed that wherever one goblin was, more were following, but it is, I think, just blunt. Anyway,
Well,
Avery
yeah.
and Blunt.
Sorry, the rest are with Snowdrop hearing her tales of mischief.
Yes, yes. Uh, so Avery and Blunt, Avery heads to Tashlet to get a quick res on the damage that she has sustained from other goblin fights.
Yeah, and it's probably worth talking about the fact that Avery is the person who doesn't immediately go home. Like Lucy went home, reunited with her family. Verona went home, family wasn't quite there, which is good. But she took someone else back to her home. Whereas like Avery is the one who, yeah, spends most of her snippet not at home. And I mean, like really, like Walbo could have done this healing off screen if he wanted to. I feel like this is just not only building up to Avery going home, like which we'll get to, but I like this as just this is Avery. Like she'll make her way home, but first she's got to go and she's going to get some help. She's going to help some other people. Like she's always sort of on the move. I like this as a very Avery way of doing her homecoming. Like the homecoming is about meeting new people and going to new places as much as it is going home.
Mm, mm, yeah. Um, yeah. Shall we? I I want to touch on this thing with uh, Tash that we hinted at before, which is like it boggles my mind how much Wildbow is able to pull together these disparate threads and just have so have such density of narrative payoff. Like, so okay, Avery goes to Tasha for healing, which we had kind of known that she was going to do, and it makes perfect sense. But then suddenly the conversation pivots to Avery's fears about her family, this other dangling thread, and Tashlet's experiences of being an other but not realizing that she's another, and then emerging as another, and having what is kind of analogous to a coming out, but as another, is such a
Yeah.
perfect mirror for Avery to like to reflect through, right? And it's just like as I was reading this unfold, I was like how the fuck has this all just worked so perfectly? And I feel like Wildbow does it all the time, where these like three or four disparate threads all just suddenly converge, and you're just like, what the fuck? How have these worked so well? It seems inhuman.
And it's always like you see this and you're like, "Oh, how didn't I see that
Yeah, it's
connection
so
before?"
obvious and perfect that it's insane that we didn't see it coming. But then it happens, and you're just like, huh. I mean, yeah.
Especially because like something I wanted to bring up from this whole Tash section is I just don't like. So a big thing for Avery in her journey of like growth and defining herself has been she wants to be someone who's less like anxious and flighty and more confident. And like Tash is such a great bouncing off point for that because Tashlet has this like literally inhuman ability to just let things like wash over her.
Yes, indeed.
Um, she's a water goddess or begotten or whatever. So these things just wash over, and it's like that is in so many ways what Avery wants to be. I think she wants to be someone who is able to just let these things happen and not be so affected by them. Like obviously,
Mm,
she doesn't want to be cold and heartless, but there's a middle ground between where she is and where someone like Alexander would be.
yes.
And I think that's yeah. So I love that Tashlet is as a bouncing off point, or as a mirror, because Tashlet is also in many ways the sort of person Avery wants to be.
Mm, yeah. No, she is. She's a great role model. I mean, yeah, it's just awesome. It just works
Yeah.
so well.
Although, just like on that topic, how does Tashlet do it? Like, I'm a bit of an Avery in this regard too, and I'm just constantly watching Tashlet be like, like shit happens. And it's just like, no, but this was really bad shit. How
Yeah.
is it not like? How are you not
How
a
are you not
fucking mess?
angry? Yeah. How are
Like,
you not
she's
more angry
just
at this?
yeah, she's so fucking cool about it all the time. We learn this detail here that she's actually only like partway through her transformation. Like,
Yes, she will continue to become less and less human.
yeah, which I've sort of just taken to mean she's gonna fucking turn into some sort of sea monster
Mm,
or something. Um, and I was like, okay, like in my head, like I just go stuff like, is that it? Is she just knows that she's in some sort of like cocoon stage right now, so she can just not dwell on this stuff because she knows it's gonna be totally different once she's just like I'm just trying to rationalize in my head how she can possibly be so fucking cool about it.
I mean, there's a more horrifying explanation, which is that part of her being an other is that she has kind of othered her emotions, right? Like, she just
Mm,
literally doesn't feel it because of something that makes her an other.
yeah, God, or is I mean, it's not ideal, but you could do worse. Like,
Yeah, I suppose.
not to get all Verona about it, but if you're gonna lose part of your humanity, like anxiety is not the worst part to toss away.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Um, fucking, yeah, I can't get it. She's just so chill about it. Sorry, I'll shut up about this now.
um, just a quick, fun, light beat. The charades with Avery and Tash is pretty fun, and it reminds me of like Snowdrop and how we as readers are kind of forced to pay more attention and get inside the heads of characters who have non-traditional ways of communicating here. I just think it's great.
Mm. Yeah, and because I think this is the first time we've seen, well, the first real time we've seen someone who isn't Verona really try to talk to Tashlet. Like, I think, Avery's briefly communicated with her in fights and stuff,
Mm,
but I feel like this is the first time Verona hasn't been here to act as like a translator for Tashlet,
mm.
for a proper conversation. So, yeah, it makes it feel harder. Like we're constantly like Avery does bring up a number of times that Verona is better at this, but Avery tries really damn hard, and it works out. They sort of find a rhythm eventually.
Yeah, yeah, they do, and it works pretty well. But the whole time, Avery is also being like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not Verona," which is great. Classic Avery. Um, yeah, Avery heads back home, back to her family, and almost immediately pulls her parents aside to have a chat.
Yep. And so again, like this is the new Avery. She's come home. She's grown. She's this whole time when she immediately pulls them over. She's thinking to herself like, I can't do arms. I've got to stand firm. She's making her voice and her opinion heard. Like there's the bit where she just tells her dad that his coworker's an asshole. I don't think Avery would have done that 2 months ago. Like, yeah, yeah. Again, like this is just a huge moment for her. This is the same girl who like, what a month ago. How long were they at the school? Not very long.
Mm,
Um, like this, like she all but ran away from home to go to the school rather than sit in the car with her dad. Like she wasn't capable of this confrontation or even the possibility of it when she left, and now she's able to come home and just sort of have it on her own terms and make it happen. It's huge.
mm. Yeah, she's clearly got some strong development that has helped her tackle this, and we kind of get this at the end of the chapter when she puts it into a nice little sentence. But
Mm.
let's talk about her dad's reaction, which is, I mean, I guess it could be worse, right? Like he had to, in air quotes, come to terms with it, which is like obviously latent homophobia, but it's clear, and Sheridan expresses this whenever he has this sentiment, that like he is putting in effort to get himself around it, which is nice. So yeah, it's obviously not great. He's obviously started from a bad place, but he's trying to get better.
Yeah, like that's what it sort of came down to for me. And I think we had a very similar conversation to this when we saw him in Can We Talk About the Girls?
Yeah.
It's sort of like he's not doing great, but he's trying, and as long as he's trying and he's improving, I'm at least always going to cut him a little bit of slack because like what more can we ask from people? Like or, if that's not good enough, then we're in real trouble. Um so yeah, he has that's it. There was that one moment, then he starts making the joke about like, teenage pregnancies or whatever. And I was just, oh, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Like but yeah, I don't know. I'm willing to put up with a bit of that sort of nonsense from him if he's like taking on the feedback. Like when he says that, everyone's like, "Shut the fuck up." But if he
Yeah.
keeps learning, I'll be like, "Okay, like this is acceptable."
I think it would be even better or especially good, and we'll have to see how it goes. But if his growth isn't tied to Avery pushing him on it, like
Yeah,
if it's her constantly having to fight that battle, it's going to come across a lot worse than if he independently is able to go off and improve over time.
yeah. Her mum steps up in that regard. Like her mum is the
Yes,
first
true.
one to admonish him for the joke. Her mum is the one who sort of says, "When you're ready to bring a girl home, I'll keep your dad in check," which is
Yeah.
basically, yeah, her mum doing the mum job and saying, "Hey, yeah, so there is this bullshit, but I'm gonna like try and tackle it for you." So
Yeah.
yeah, again,
Yeah.
Avery's mom, pretty good.
Yeah, no, she does really well. So 2 thumbs up to her. Avery then has a nice moment of kinship with Sheridan that obviously quickly goes south. So instead, she skips up onto the window and looks at the stars, seeing the Crooked Rook and Alpy outside doing their rounds.
Yeah, which isn't ominous at all, really. I love Sheridan in this whole segment. Like
Mm,
Sheridan just has that perfect, like, yeah, just sarcastic asshole of acceptance vibe. Um, yeah, I don't know. I really have anything more to say. I was just like, it's kind of nice for Avery to have Sheridan in this very snowdroppy way of you can tell that Sheridan has her back through Sheridan's form of communicating that is to talk shit about everyone.
yeah. Um, yeah. Which is, I mean, better. Better than her dad's reaction, I'll say.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe like as a recovering sarcastaholic myself,
Mm.
I can't help but see the appeal of that. I don't know, form of support.
Mm. Um, yeah, and this chapter ends with a really nice moment from Avery where she thinks she's going to be stronger as she had done here, head on. No, prongs on, which is great.
Oh, she's such a dork. I love it. Yeah, I mean, sticking with the horns, I guess, Avery. Again, like this chapter, like this is sort of the end of 8.8, and it's like again, I love it for sort of showing how much these four have grown in their time
Mm,
away, and they've come back as stronger people who are closer to the selves that they want to
they
be.
want to be exactly
And
right.
I that was a lot of what Arc 8 was talking about.
Yeah, and this chapter also kind of demonstrates they're going to need to be those people because things
Yes.
are not good. Like we don't actively get really that much of the terribleness in this chapter, but almost all of the Kenneteers have moments of seeing the town struggling. Like the
Yeah.
spirits of the town, the aura of the town is real bad at this point.
All three of the human Kenneteers
Yes,
have a moment where they turn their side on and see some kind of fucked up.
yes,
Um, Especially in Verona's case, it's literally I feel like it was like Montague's shift that causes the ghost to go all murdery for a bit. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. um, so that's the end of Arc 8. Bye, Arc 8. See you next time. Now we are going to dive into Arc 9, Shaking Hands. And before we get into this arc, I just want to say how much I love this arc title because it is so perfect. Shaking Hands obviously implies like peaceful accords being resolved, but also alternatively or even concurrently could mean hands shaking from, stress or danger or adrenaline. It's such an ambiguous title that could imply either type of resolution for this story, and I just loved it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Like, and again, shaking hands is what you do when you meet someone. We meet all our new other pals here.
Yep.
Shake hands when you make a deal. Deals are
Yep.
somewhat important in this universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to be a very fun arc. I
Yeah.
think we've been waiting to come back to Kennet for a while now, and so far it's living up to the expectations.
Yes. For
Also,
sure.
in 8.8, Lucy hugged her mum and Booker, but she shook hands with Alyssa. So
The arc title is already paying for itself in terms of wordplay. So Lucy wakes up and immediately things seem off. It's almost dreamlike as she finds out that Booker has died in a car crash.
This was such a fun trip. I mean, for me, I was in the camp of people who didn't figure out it was a dream until quite late. I knew something was off, but just in this world, I just assumed it was the practice or some bullshit.
Mm.
Like, um, so I was pretty gutted for a second when I thought weird shit was going on, and there was a chance Booker was really dead.
There's like one paragraph that gave it away to me as she's still kind of heading to meet her mum. There's one paragraph where she just kind of describes how she's almost floating through as she walks, and to me that immediately signaled, okay, we're in a dream here. I'll try and find the actual specific quote, but yeah. Anyway, it obviously.
There were things for me that was like, like the clock flashing 0000,
Yeah.
or like, like all these little things, like the posters being ominous. But again, I was just like, that's probably some magic shit. I don't know, like, yeah.
It's this line here to me. It had felt like she was floundering, heavy with fatigue and sleepless, with no solid ground to stand on. But finding that fact to anchor to had helped. It feels that's the most dreamlike sentence to me. Anywho, so yeah, like regardless, it hits pretty hard, right? Lucy is effectively being unintentionally blamed by her mother for Booker's death, and when she interprets that, I was just like, oh fuck.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, that's not what Jazz is doing, but she says
No,
things in such a way that it's like, Lucy will manage
Lucy
to
can
blame
interpret it.
herself.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like, oh, they said there's been more crime and stuff, and it's like, well, we know that's the Carmine Beast, so it's Lucy's job for not solving this ridiculously high stakes murder case in a couple of weeks.
yeah,
Yeah, classic Lucy. And I mean, this is a moment that sort of holds up regardless of whether it's a dream or not, because as Lucy says, like, she's processing this, like, it feels real to her,
yeah.
but she still has to go through it.
Yes. I found it quite hilarious that she very nearly detectives her way out of this dream by realizing how nonsensical it is.
Yeah, especially because it pisses off Alpi. Like, I love how, like, belligerent Alpi is just always the best form of her, and I love how she gets to immediately enter the room and be like, "Oh, can you stop? Like,
Yeah, no,
you're
please
tearing
don't do
down my
that.
good work."
Yeah, I put in a lot of effort to make this happen.
Do you
Yeah.
know how hard it was to torture you like this to get a conversation? God, stop being so rude. Um, I mean, can we talk about Alpi as a choice? Because obviously, like, we saw Alpi at the end of 8.8, like,
Yeah,
hanging out with Crooked Rook.
yeah,
So you sort of immediately, even once you see it's Alpi, you're like, okay, well, still though, like, hold on. And especially Alpi to me, I feel like we had this argument like way back in Arc 2, but I've always been kind of shifty on Alpi,
mm,
as like she does all that like, oh, I don't like to get into the politics sort of
mm,
nonsense.
yeah,
Um, which actually just seems ripe for someone like Crooked Rook to come in and extremize by threatening the stability she has. So yeah, this is very fun. Like, immediately when it's Alpi, I feel like, at least with that extra detail, I was put in a space of thinking, oh, okay, here we fucking go. Like, Alpi's going to be up to some shit now.
yeah. So yeah, Alpi has created this nightmare for Lucy in order to give her a warning. Be careful, your family's probably in danger. Probably a warning that was already kind of known, but good to make it tangible, I guess. This nightmare is about Booker dying, so I guess it really makes it hit home to Lucy about the fact that she needs to, play defense a bit.
Yeah, Alpi makes her fucking point right here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, it's funny because like I remember us worrying in Arc One that the families were a vector for attack for the culprits, and then that idea just kind of slipped away over time. I think from my conscious thought, at least, and then like I'm glad that the stories just sort of come in and been like, remember this. This is something that isn't secure. Um,
Mm.
and we've just had a whole chapter about the friendships and the families that these three have. Like, Avery's got acceptance with a good chunk of her family. Like losing her mum or Sheridan would be devastating. Obviously, Lucy's got Booker and her mum, and Verona's got her found family in Jeremy. She canonically doesn't give a shit about her dad. She brings that up later in the chapter, but yeah, they've all got people they can lose.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Um, yeah, and actually, speaking of Alpi as a choice following the end of the last chapter, almost immediately Alpi comes in and mentions that she's been chit-chatting to Rook, who's not interested in all the political stuff, don't worry. But the original Kennet others, they're getting too dangerous. Maybe we should take care of them, huh?
Yeah, I want us all to remember Arc 8, which was the arc where we didn't have to worry about this two sides bullshit. Because we just got done with this nonsense at the Blue Heron Institute, and the fucking second everyone's back in Kennet, Alpi, or Crooked Rook via Alpi, is suddenly here being like, the other side, they're pretty bad. I wouldn't trust those. The original Kennet others, they're under the sway. And like, the thing I hate about this the most is it actually makes a lot of sense. Like, the conspirators got away with it
Yeah.
and are seemingly still in a position of power. So
yeah, that's the one redeeming thing for Rook, isn't it? That it is true that if the original Kennet others have more of a vote and are the sponsors behind these new Kennet others, that's obviously a recipe for a civil war, right?
yeah, well, yeah, I feel like Crooked Rook's thing here that she says via Alpi is you need to lean on the new ones more and work with them and sort of getting good with them, which is just like, yeah, it's just such a fucking mess because yeah, it's partially true. Like I hate this. This is Arc 3 all over again where we didn't know who we could trust or who we should be afraid of, and I just want everyone to get along.
Yeah. Well, they can't. There's got to be some villains in here somewhere. So yeah, Lucy wakes up for real this time and has breakfast with the fam. Some delicious sweet pastries, nothing better, which is great.
Yeah, some nice positive whiplash for Lucy as well as us. I love that we sneak in this moment with Alyssa and Booker having had very explicit drunk driving PSA dreams. It's just like, thanks, Alpi. Redeemed. I'm
Yep.
actually, you know what? I'm fully on Crooked Rook's side now.
yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's funny that they had the same dream. It's a classic moment. And now, I'm sure you've had that experience, Elliot, where a sibling and you have had the same dream and you're like, well, what the fuck? And now you have an explanation for it. Trying to get a message from a
From a nightmare.
mayor. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so many nice moments in this whole morning thing, like the bit where Jazz tortures Booker with the blender. Um, I love the bit where Lucy suggests a horror movie marathon with Booker because it's just like, isn't that your life now? Why do you want to watch horror movies? Like, I suppose it's like fucking research.
I mean, yeah, sure. Why not? Got to do something to take your mind off it.
But it's not. It's doing the opposite.
No, you're
That's
right. It doesn't make sense. I don't have an explanation for you, Elliot.
That's like me sitting down with my sisters. It's like, hey, you want to watch like YouTube videos on how to make like VR games? Like,
Yeah.
this is her day job, and she wants to sit there and watch horror movies. What are you doing? Take the day.
Having said that, Elliot, I bet you have watched videos on how to make VR games on your time off before, haven't you? Come on.
Yeah, but not with my siblings.
True, that does make it a bit weirder. So yeah, Booker and Alyssa are alive, albeit hungover.
For now.
Yeah, for now. And Alyssa seems to be slowly earning her keep for Lucy. She seems pretty chill. But obviously Alyssa is going to turn out to be a practitioner. So yeah, I mean, think about it this way, Elliot. what better way to fulfill Alpi's warning about needing to protect Booker than by Alyssa herself being the danger to Booker?
Just about any other way.
It's pretty perfect.
I mean, okay, if we're gonna do this bullshit, Alyssa, but what's in between those two A's?
Oh my god, you're right, Elliot.
Liz,
It rhymes with
Liz.
a miss. So
I was going for Liz, but
Liz,
either
yeah. Could be that too.
Liz. Ah,
yeah. Well, both hinting to us. See, it's Alyssa. You know.
We cracked it.
So stupid. Yeah, Booker's come home because a school near the one he was staying at had a recent spate of weird murders, so he's decided to come back home for the summer. Anyway, moving on to the actual story, I guess. The Kenneteers are regrouping on their way to the town meeting, catching up on each other's little mini adventures, and they are joined by a startlingly familiar new Kenneteer, Liz. Liz? I don't know.
I'm gonna say Liz, just because. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I mean, like, I can't wait to get into Liz. She fucking rules.
Yeah, she's baller. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of creepy, right? Liz's doppelganger shtick, right? She's basically like the best friend that they've never met before, or like I almost want to describe it as when in like season 2 or season 3 of a TV show, a new character is introduced or someone's recast and they come in and they're like, "Hi guys, I've been here the whole time." Or like, remember that episode of Community where Jack Black's in it and then he's been edited into all the previous scenes and you're like, "No, that's not right." That's definitely the vibe it gave me.
Yeah, you're right. She just rocks up and she's so like friendly already. And I mean, like, what's great about that is she's just picking up what they're putting down.
Yeah.
Like this is like Liz is going to be so fascinating in every scene she's in. Like, she's already one of my favorite characters to keep an eye on because, like, I mean, poor Wildbow has set himself a pretty rough task here because from a writing perspective, so I'm obviously not a writer, but I feel like when you're writing character stuff, it's like you sort of have a model for the character in your head of like what their personality is, what their goals are, and all that, and you use that to sort of write out the scene with the other characters. And Liz is so interesting because like part of that model has to completely be changed depending on who she's impersonating at the time. Like Kenneteer Liz versus Liz is in an old folks home are going to be, there's like the same self still underneath. There's like this core part of the model that goes unchanging, but the way it's expressed and the way she uses it will be totally different. And I just think that's so cool because, again, it's telling us stuff about the Kenneteers when she's doing this, as well as like telling us stuff about her. Like, there's so much to play with here. Just as a writing device, I think she's so cool.
Yeah, she's good, isn't she? She's she's real interesting. It's hard to get a solid read on her by design. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see.
Because she's like, she brings up like, oh, when they first sort of meet her, she's like, oh, I've been like prodding those people at the tables over there, like getting this old guy to piss people off and make them leave. And I'm already like, okay, this is like fucking social manipulation stuff, which, you know, how much of that was from the people she's getting there, or how much of that is like, you know, she's somebody who was formed in that like girls' school where that was sort of her core. Like, how much of this is her, how much of it is the group she is. Like, it's going to be so fun to explore the core part of Liz that is unchanging, and that is herself, by seeing her in all these different places, as well as like at the same time you're sort of reading into the people she's impersonating.
Yeah.
Like you can see a bit of Avery in her where she's sort of like, oh, come on, let's like go over, like let's walk, and she like makes Avery fucking lock hands with her, or so lock arms, which is just like, you know, oh good, like Avery finally has someone who's going to be as like friendly as she is.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll see. Liz is explicitly hard to get a solid read on, so we'll have to see.
And we're explicitly given reasons to doubt her by the end of the chapter. Snowdrop is not cool with her.
Yes.
And it's like, don't make me choose.
Yeah, I mean, no, we get what is clearly a marker in a lot of horror or any kind of movie like this. No, sorry, not movie, but any kind of story of like animals distrust this thing, right?
Mhm.
Therefore, thing bad. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, is that fair? Like, yeah, I guess we'll see.
Mm,
I just think this concept for Liz and how she plays out is everything I wanted it to be, and I can't wait to
mm,
see how it keeps going. We've also she talks a bit about Crooked Rook. I wanted to bring up. If for no other reason, then Liz does tell us that she doesn't think Rook is like a schemer like the fairy or like Alexander. She's just a tactician. Like she just knows when to strike, but she's not going to be like playing 10 levels of the game or any bullshit. Which I was like, oh, you're my new favorite villain because I just don't have that in me anymore. There's
mm.
too many schemers in this story. I need a villain who's just gonna like do an evil villain speech and then strike at the right time.
Yeah. Nice to have a different non-scheming kind of villain. I mean, I don't even know if we can necessarily call Rook non-scheming because uh based on just the immediate speed with which Alpi seems to be on board with Rook shenanigans, it's hard to not see that as a scheme.
Yeah, I see the scheming more as like it's like those multiple levels of like deception and stuff. Like
Mm,
I don't. Yeah, I don't think Rook's going to be playing those like 3D chess game bullshit. She's going to do this shit where she goes straight up and gets Albie to talk to them at the right time to tell them what she wants them to hear. And it's probably what she actually thinks.
mm.
Like a beat we keep hitting with Rook is she's seen stuff like this go down before. And that's so terrifying. And also, I'm like, could we just go talk to her about exactly what happened and figure out how to change it? Like, tell us that story so it doesn't happen again.
Mm. Yeah.
Also, it can't be exactly like this, right? Like, it can't have been a town where one of the fucking little other oasis where one of the 4 judges got killed and like,
I mean, if it is, that's pretty sus.
um, yeah. I mean, like Rook's power is so interesting as well with like the
Mm,
themes we were talking about being particularly prevalent in Arc 8 with like defining yourself and choosing who yourself is. Rook kind of seems to be able to completely undermine that because one of her abilities is to like fundamentally change what an other is. So they talk about like this boogeyman who had like spikes and was scary and shit. And she sort of turned him into a performing clown and took the abyss out.
mm,
And I'm like, okay, like there's so much to play with there because on the one hand, how do you have the moral authority to do that to someone without their consent?
mm.
But then also simultaneously, I'm like, hey, she can literally pull the bad stuff out of people. Isn't that a
Yeah.
great way to
Isn't
fix
that
people?
obviously
Like,
great? Yeah.
like just from a rehabilitation perspective, like yes, like I mean, this is that whole thing is like if
Yeah.
self and what an other is manipulable, that like changes so many foundational things. Like like can you take away weaknesses? Like yeah, with the goblins, can you take away some of their worst sides and leave them with the parts that we like? Like so they'll just be lovable idiots who suplex cigarettes. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like this is almost as interesting to me as Liz's power for what it sort of means. For like, just if you can change people, when are you allowed to do that? What does that mean for the concept of self? What does that mean for anything? Like, it changes everything. It's huge.
Yes. Yes, it does. It's interesting. I don't know. We haven't got Rook's obviously not at the meeting, so we don't get a picture of
Mm.
her. So who knows what to take from it.
Does she use this for rehabilitation? Like, or is she going to use it? Like, it's like Alexander. Remember, Alexander had all these tools to like help him
Yeah.
empathize with people, and he used it to bring them down. Like,
Yeah.
she has this power to take the worst parts out of people. Is that what she uses it for, or is she keeping these bits of like
Mm.
Mr. Spiky Wheel's anger, and she's taking that and she's going to use it next time for bad purposes? Like, yeah,
Elliot, you called him Mr. Spiky Wheels. Did you not realize what that other was clearly a reference to?
no,
That other was obviously the combined rage and frustration of everyone who played Dark Souls and died against those pinwheel skeletons.
oh, those things.
Hmm.
You just dodge sideways.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you and I know that, but younger practitioners who are maybe bumping into them for the first time, oh, it's a bloodbath.
Um,
Anyway.
Also, so last little bit from this conversation with Liz, we
Yeah.
once again hear about witch hunters, and apparently some witch hunters are snooping around town. Um, I mean, I feel like witch hunters have been brought up a number of times throughout this story now. So I'm like, are we actually gonna finally get to meet some? Because that'll be
Mm,
cool. Uh, yeah, I mean, because that'll be fun for the Kenneteers is meeting people who hunt witches.
yeah. Uh, well, as a group of three witches, I mean, inherently that idea is a bit worrying, but we'll have to see, I suppose.
I mean, because I'm just picturing like the image we get of witch hunters in this from Liz. I'm basically picturing like the hunters from Supernatural.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Liz obviously has had negative run-ins with them before, so again, hard to know if this is going to be a nice interaction or something horrifying.
I can't. Either way, I can't wait.
um, so yeah, the group arrives at Matthew's house, and we get our first proper look at all of the newbies before Cherry ruins it.
Um, excuse you. She does the opposite of that.
Yeah,
She fights a cigarette and loses.
it is a pretty great moment, isn't it? When she's just so desperate for a win that she suplexes Sig and gets burned.
Especially, I love it for this bit. Like, they sort of walk into this meeting, and it's so fucking like. Originally, I was going to say like James Bond, evil villain room, but it's more
Mm,
like it's like some Freemason cult
yes, for
bullshit
sure.
where it's like this dark room with the curtains drawn and Edith lights the candles, and it's this stupid secret society vibe. That makes sense because they can't have the sunlight with the ghouls, I think, but
Mm,
um, it's like this really sort of intense atmosphere, and everyone's being quiet. And when Sherry starts fighting this other goblin, and they're sort of like, "Oh, this is going to go on for a bit," Edith actually just checks in with the Kenneteers on like a very human level,
yeah,
and I
that was
just,
a really nice moment, wasn't it?
I was like, "Oh, thank God for Cherry and her dumb bullshit," because it
Yeah.
actually gives us the space for Edith to connect with them as people, which was an important moment, I think.
Yeah. Can we talk about Jabba as well? Because two great things about Jabba. One, we find out why he's called that, which is that he just makes nonsensical sounds. The quote that I pulled out here was "Bara hula hula, ruga magabula," which is some of the first stuff that he says. But also, I was expecting him to kind of be Frankenstein-esque. Sorry, Frankenstein's monster-esque, I guess.
No, no, no. We use the XKCD uh, continuity on here, which means the monster is called Frankenstein.
Fair enough. But no, he's only 3 feet tall, so he is real short, which was not what I expected at all.
Yeah, like for me, Jabba is the one I just don't feel like I get
Mm,
out of all the newbies. Like I feel like with all of them, I sort of get their vibe, or you know, part of their inspiration, or where I think they fit in all these sorts of metaphors of people being hurt by the system coming to Kennet.
mm.
Jabber is one I just continue to look at, and I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck you are or where the fuck you're going. But you're just this weird little yelly guy who apparently scares the heck out of an entire group of alchemists. Um, I have no idea what to do with Jabba.
Yeah, he's a weird one,
He,
isn't he?
he's kind of the most interesting to me because I'm like, I have no idea what Walbo is setting up with you at all.
Um, yeah, I have no idea either, but we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Um, Also, just worth noting, it's really nice to see all these characters again. Obviously, I realized how much I've missed some of them, especially Gilame. Seeing Gilame, I was like, "Oh shit,
Yeah.
it's Gilame!" I'm so thrilled that we get to get more interactions with Gil before his presumably tragic fate befalls him.
Yeah, no, you're right. There were like when we sort of go through the list of the usual suspects, which is fantastic phrasing for Lucy to use. I was just like, oh, it's good to see Marisica, the evil villainess again. Oh, it's so nice to see John, even though we kind of saw him. But yeah, it was just nice to see everyone together again.
Yeah, it was great. It just really felt nice to see everyone again.
And I mean, obviously, like this chapter does a lot of legwork introducing us to the newbies, especially for those who aren't reading the extra materials and would have missed like all of
Yep,
that setup.
yep,
Um, like yeah, we sort of meet Nibble and Chloe here,
yep.
and Chloe's not having a good time. She's actually worse off than I thought coming into this.
Yeah, she seems pretty out of it, huh?
Yeah. Like you can sort of see how Nibble has ended up in like a carer's position. Like he's
Yeah,
sort of her carer. Um,
Kara slash boyfriend seems.
Yeah. Um. Also, sorry, I am backtracking a bit here. Lucy takes note of the fact that as they're walking in, Matthew's truck rolls down the street as they're on the street, and she notes that's a strangely common occurrence. And I
Yeah.
went back and looked, and she's right. He's fucking always driving in as they arrive. This feels like a tinfoil
I
thing,
know that line
but
jumped out to
what?
me as well. Of like, wait, what? But yeah,
I don't even know
what
what's
does it even
tinfoil.
mean?
Like, I feel like I feel like Wabba's just dropped this line on us. It's like, hey, you should be tinfoiling about this. I just keep looking at it. I'm like, I don't know. I don't, I don't know.
here's the here's the theory. This entire thing, Elliot, all the
Oh
Kennet
god.
others, everything in Kennet, is a Truman Show esque trick being played on the Kenneteers, and Matthew is just kind of waiting, in the wings, as it were, for the next scene to start before he enters, and Lucy is starting to cotton on
I mean, honestly, that's better than any of the ideas I've got, which really says a lot about my ideas. Um,
to
yeah, this feels like a line where in a couple of arcs are going to be like, oh, that's what it meant. But right now, I don't know, man.
Who knows what to take from it. But yeah, Matthew wastes no time in making things weird. He seems to be asking the Kenneteers to kind of back off without being willing to say it, and Lucy says they
Mm.
won't. Matthew accepts this, and the meeting continues very awkwardly.
Oh yeah, I mean, it reminded me a lot of Arc 3, as I think I already touched on with the like. Remember after Mist disappeared, and there was the whole tension between the Kenneteers and the Kennet others,
Mm.
and it eventually got resolved. But it's just like they've gone away for a bit. The town's grown, and now we kind of have to go through it all again, with much more dire circumstances surrounding it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I really don't know what we're meant to take from this interaction, because obviously it's meant to be important, but it's hard to know. Matthew's being so cagey about it. It seems like some of the others have some kind of reassurance that they want that the Kenneteers either will or won't do something, but Matthew doesn't say what it is. He kind of hints at it, but he doesn't say it, and Lucy doesn't seem to give a satisfying response. So it's kind of just like, huh, okay, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, like my best read on it right now just feels like the obvious one where it's like they all came here to some extent to escape practitioners and they're thriving and they're just worried that practitioners will pull things towards the status quo of the outside world that doesn't work for them. Um
But wasn't that already
yeah,
part of the pitch for Kennet? Was like these practitioners are like part of the team?
I mean, maybe Matt and Edith didn't really lay that out clearly. I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like that, but that's just like my. I feel like I'm defaulting to the obvious and presumably wrong answer. I'm sure there'll be like an extra layer to it, especially because we ended the chapter on this question.
Yes.
Um, but like all I can think of is the obvious thing where it's just like yeah, they don't want practitioners here to kind of upset their control. Like I think the others, they have the embodiment of the town on their council. The others are kind of in control here, and having practitioners around is them sort of acknowledging that they have to abide by the wider systems of this world. They are still beholden to Solomon's setup.
Yeah. I think the thing I took from it is it felt like they were trying to get permission to hunt innocents, but that can't be it because they've got Ken in here, right? Like Ken's part of the group. Although he
Yeah.
wasn't at this meeting. It's like, what do they want? I don't know what they want.
I think they just want control for themselves, and they're just worried
Mm,
that with practitioners here that isn't possible. But I don't know. That just feels like the obvious thing.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
keep coming back to this idea, like Alpi mentioned at the start of the chapter in the dream. The culprits of the murder,
Are
the
in
big
this
thing she
room.
introduced here is they don't want to put things back. Like they're not going
Yeah.
to take the throne and stabilize things.
Yeah.
Or according to Alpi, they're probably going to don the furs and leave things as they are now.
Mm.
Which, who's that working for? Because it seems like nobody at the moment.
Mm. Yep. Probably nobody. um, but that's the beat on which this chapter ends.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already very excited for this arc. There's going to be shenanigans with the new others, with the old others,
Yeah.
with the Kenneteers' home lives. Like, there's, yeah, this is going to be great.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll have to see how this arc starts to shape out as it continues. But that's all for our arc discussions today. Let's jump forward to some pale predictions, shall we?
Yeah. What
A
have
lot
you
of
got?
great predictions this week. I've put out a prediction by Meiji Hao, who has been on the show predicting a few times, but this one I really love. They actually had two predictions. One was a bit more wild. It was about Miss being Charles's familiar, which was crazy, and I admired its spirit, but I don't think it's going to come true, so I didn't necessarily want to read it out. But the other one I think is great and is definitely true. Meiji Hao says, I am confident that Charles's piece of the Blue Heron God was used in the creation of the Hungry Choir. It's obviously a bit technological, and there's a part of the Hungry Choir that fits this, which is its weird technomancy-esque website, which feels right in line with things like Ray's secret Seven Dwarves kind of security system for his domain, right? Which I just thought was great. Like the technomancy angle of the Hungry Choir website is something that has never really fit with the rest of the idea of the Hungry Choir. So the fact that might be a kind of remnant of energy from this techno god that was destroyed, I think is just an awesome idea.
Yeah, I mean, I, I guess the curious part of that to me would be how Charles managed to hold on to the Blue Heron God stuff when he got forsworn. 'Cause
Good
wasn't he
question.
forsworn before Yolda was turned, or before Yolda was killed?
Yes, I think so. Or
Yeah, I'd probably have to double check the
yeah, I'm
timeline.
not sure
It's all a bit
actually.
fuzzy to me now. I got to bring up that old timelines doc.
I mean, of course, there is the thought that Charles's forswearing is somehow not what it seems.
Yeah, or if he'd already put that power into tools and he managed to hold on to the tools, like
Yeah, maybe.
there's ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He had given the power to some of the Kennet others for safekeeping or something.
yeah. I mean that connection to it having a website feels very good to
Yeah.
me. I like that a lot.
What prediction did you pull out, Elliot?
I really struggled to pull one out this week. There were a lot of good ones this week. I feel like all these new characters and this return to Kennet
It's
has
getting people's
just,
minds whirring.
yeah, like there were honestly, if nobody makes another prediction for like a month, I think I'll still have a new one to pull out every week.
Mm.
I eventually settled on just pulling out one by BG. This is just a fun idea, which is that Matthew and Edith both think the other one killed the Carmine Beast, and they're both derailing the investigation to cover for their partner, but neither of them did it. They just haven't actually asked each other because they don't want to know, because then they'd have to say it
Interesting.
if it comes up. I don't know if I buy this because I'm pretty firmly on the Edith done it train, but it's definitely a fun idea that there'd be a reveal that actually they've both been trying to cover for the other one, and really neither of them were involved.
That would be a fun reveal. Well, we'll have to see. Yeah, I don't know. Edith is too suspicious to me to not be actually tangibly involved. So,
Yeah.
we will have to see on that front, I think. Yeah, but that's the show, folks. If you want to leave your pale predictions, you can find the link to do so by going to the show notes down below, where you can find links to all kinds of stuff, including the discussion thread, where you can leave your thoughts on this show, the chapters that we covered, the show in general, or just any old thingamajig. Why not?
Yes, you can also find us on Twitter, Pale Reflections. Just search for it. It's where the live reads happen. That's where the new episodes coming out are announced. The schedule should be mostly on time, but will be a bit funky for the next week and a bit. So, stay tuned there if you want to find the episodes exactly as they come out. Also, it's where we tell you when Pace episodes come out.
What's pace, Elliot?
So Pace is an initiative I've really taken control of. No, I mean, do you want to talk about it? It's your baby.
I do want to talk about it, Elliot. Thanks for allowing me to do so. Pace is an actual play show that is a kind of edited role-playing session. So I, as the game master, as well as you, Kipos, and Linus, the other players, are all playing through a very interesting story that is set in a theoretical future of the Otherverse. So it's packed in space, hence the name. But yeah, I mean, we've released the first episode last Wednesday. New episodes are coming out every single Wednesday. You can subscribe to that either on the combined feed, which you might be having right now, or you can go and find a Pace specific feed where the new episodes will come out every Wednesday. I've I've been working on this. We've been working on the show for about 6 months, Elliot, and I'm so thrilled that it's finally starting to release. I'm really proud of it, and I think everyone will hopefully enjoy it very much.
Yeah, I mean, we is a strong word. You've done 90% of the work for this, and I'm enjoying it as a player. And I've also listened to the first episode to try and remember what happened, and it's come together really well. I think you've done a great job.
And we haven't even got to any of the real crazy shit yet.
Yeah, it's going to get wild, folks. So please do listen.
Yeah, there's some real wild stuff in there. So if you want to check that out, you can head to doofmedia.com, where you will see the episodes of Pace listed, and you can subscribe from there. Or just search Pace in any old podcatcher.
Yes. So Pace was directly a result of the brilliant supporters we had during our charity stream at the end of Deep Impact.
Yes.
But it also wouldn't have been possible without the patrons of Doof. So patreon.com/Doof Media. Because obviously all the money that was donated during that stream went to the charity. So
yes. That doesn't help cover any costs.
Which is the Patreon money to do Pace. And you'll see we've got brilliant art and stuff, and none of that would be possible without the patrons. So if you want to support stuff like that continuing to happen, please consider hitting up our Patreon.
Yes, you can find it at patreon.com/Doof Media. And while you're on Patreon, you can, of course, go to Warbo's Patreon at patreon.com/Warbo and throw him some money, because he deserves it for all the great content that he has consistently put out. It's worth reflecting. Pale is a pretty great story, and you get it for free. So if you want, make sure that he can keep doing that and keep bringing this work to other people by going to his Patreon.
Yeah, exactly. Warbo wouldn't be able to do this story without his patrons, so please consider becoming one.
Yeah.
Or upping your donation if you're not. If you already are.
And with that, it's the end of the show. So we'll catch you next time. Or if you watch Pace, listen to Pace. See you on Wednesday. I mean, not see you, I guess, because you're not watching it. Talk to you on Wednesday. Bye.
Talk to you then.